So we have some disappointing news when it comes to the Nikon Z9 II. According to Nikon rumors, the Nikon Z9 will not be a big upgrade.
No, God, please, no!
Now, before we get too down about this camera, remember at the earliest, this shouldn't be announced till somewhere at the end of this year, or it shouldn't be coming out till the end of this year. So this is a camera that's further out, and you are dealing with a rumor site, even though from my experience, I believe Nikon rumors is generally pretty reliable. This is still not necessarily set in stone type stuff, and this is a camera that is still further down the road. Also, I will say, even with this more disappointing news that we're getting, there is maybe a bit of a silver lining for video people, so I'll get into that in a bit. So let's go ahead and jump into the article. It will be linked down below if you want to go check it out for yourself. But the first thing it says is that the Nikon Z9 will not be a major update. They said, think of the D5 to D6 upgrade. Now, personally, I'm fairly new to the Nikon game. I just got into it with the mirrorless camera. I have the Nikon Z8, so I'm not really sure of the history, and I think some of you may know better than I do. I will say that we've seen cameras like the Sony Alpha 1 and the Sony Alpha 1 Mark II that has recently been announced, and it was a very minimal upgrade. You had the Canon R1 that was somewhat of an upgrade from the Canon R3, but nothing super spectacular. So I'm kind of thinking along that range of improvement is kind of what they're talking about here. They do also give some clarity about the announcement. They say that it should be announced before the February 2026 Olympics. That kind of makes a lot of sense. I think the Nikon Z9 originally came out in December, right before, like a very limited release in December, right before the Olympics that came up the following couple months, like February-ish. So that makes a lot of sense. I think that can be very much anticipated. Now, jumping to what I believe is the most disappointing news coming out of this article is they say that it will use the same sensor of the Nikon Z9. And while I think it was overall a great sensor, I have it in the Nikon Z8, but it is dated at this point. The Nikon Z9, I believe, came out in 2001. So we're going to be looking at the end of 2025. You want to see an upgrade. You want to see a progression over that many years. Also, when you look at the fact that anything that the Nikon Z9 Mark II comes out with, or Nikon Z2, I always get confused and say the Mark. They don't say Nikon Z9 II. Anyways, anything that they're adding to that camera, you got to look at it. It's the flagship. So I'm assuming that the sensor that's in there is going to follow along to like a Z8 II, which is a camera that maybe I can afford more. So the tech that they're putting in this camera is going to set the standard for the next few years of camera releases. And if we're using the same sensors and recycling things from something back in 2001, to me, that's a big disappointment. When they acquired Red and they brought them into the fold, I was hoping that they would be able to bring their sensor tech to their mirrorless cameras. I thought that that made a lot of sense. They are known to have pretty incredible sensors with some of their cinema cameras, having even a global shutter with like 18, 20 stops of dynamic range, something absolutely nuts. And I don't necessarily anticipate that, you know, $10, $15, $20,000 cinema sensor just straight to go into a Nikon Z9, but I would hope that there would be some development crossover. And that brings me to what maybe is some of the silver lining that is in this article. And they say that they're going to be bringing more Red features to this camera, which to me makes a lot of sense. I do question how much more can they bring that they couldn't already add to the Nikon Z9 now, if they're just going to be using the same sensor. Now, maybe the processor will be a significant upgrade. And one thing that does give me hope is that from all accounts, when it comes to like the video side, a lot of people that I've heard say that Nikon N-Log is what holds back some of the dynamic range out of the sensor, that maybe there's more to be unlocked there, but the log curve does not allow it. So it's possible, maybe even with the same sensor with an additional processing and using some of the techniques of Red, maybe they're able to squeeze out more dynamic range and more features out of that camera. Nikon has, of course, the 12-bit RAW that they have, the N RAW, but Red RAW is kind of like the industry standard and what you would, I guess, strive for. So if they can bring some form of a Red RAW to the camera and R3D color curves and all that different stuff, if they can bring that whole conglomerate of things just with processing power and software alone, then maybe this could still turn out to be a very special camera, especially when it comes to video, which is kind of my primary focus. Now, personally, I don't think I would even buy a Nikon Z9 II. That's probably not the camera for me. It's not the body that I would really want, but I do like the Nikon Z8, and maybe I would want the follow-up to that. So I hope that a lot of the same features would move over to that camera as well. Now, there's not much more juicy information that they give in the article. They do say it will have the same EVF as the Nikon 6 Mark III. So that is like a 5-something million dot EVF, or actually I have the notes right here. So 5.760 million dot EVF, which is decent. It's nothing super spectacular, but it is a step up. They also talk about new credential type stuff to be added, which I think is somewhat combating some AI stuff to make sure that, hey, this image is real and it's credentialed and it was taken at this time. A lot of it just sounds like a lot of metadata things. I don't know if it really is absolutely needed in hardware to be added, but maybe there's some element that needs to be added in hardware. Overall, a bit disappointed about this news. I hope that some of it's wrong. I hope that it's at least not painting a full picture, even if it is correct. And we'll just have to wait and see. And I'm excited still that I'm in the Nikon system. I still enjoy my camera. And I really think we gotta maybe somewhat lower expectations. I always was used to seeing big and bigger and bigger and better upgrades over the last few years, and going from 4K that was always cropped in to full frame 4K and high frame rate 4K, from 8-bit to 10-bit. There was a lot of development that actually affected me in my craft. But now I'm not really seeing those big updates, and I thought that Nikon was like the next big one to actually have a shot of pushing the industry forward. I felt like Sony and Canon dropped the ball, but maybe there's just something there that I'm not recognizing and not seeing. Maybe there is somewhat of a ceiling on what they can do out of these current cameras with their current budgets. So we'll have to wait and see. Drop in the comment section below and give me your thoughts on this news. If you've liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Helps out the channel. Until next time, peace.